Welcome everybody, Rob Provencher here, and I'm going to workflow some of the images from the Photography Schoolhouse Ditto Cam live broadcast from the other day. Now I'm going to go through about 4 or 5 of the images because each image represents a basic differentiation in workflow. Now the first image here, I'm going to cover some of the basics that I use in my studio, and also I applied them over and over and over again. So I'm going to cover those basics right now. If you've been a member of No BS Photo Success, you're familiar with some of these workflow strategies. Now in my studio, I shoot 100% JPEG, and all my weddings, everything, as well as the other co-founder, James Hodgins, are still big believers in shooting 100% JPEG. Saves time, saves space, and really truthfully, there's no difference if you get good capture and good white balance. And that's key. That's really key. That the focus on photography is all about good composition, good lighting, creating a dynamic image. So the image as it came off was 8 by 12. I'm going to keep it at full resolution as I workflow it here. And first thing that I'd like to do is I'm going to go to Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask, and I'm going to type in 2060 0. Now this is not a sharpening technique, however the unsharp mask is typically used for sharpening, but in this case we're going to use what's called the defog. Okay, let me just show you. See the before and after. It just brightens the image up. Now when I'm workflowing my images, I typically use curves to adjust contrast, and or I will use a technique where I'll go into blend modes. I'm going to show you that in a minute. Now that's for adjusting contrast. If I have to pull out more shadow or mid-range detail, and that's going to be relevant in the next image, I'll show you exactly how that works. But most of the time, if the image has got good capture, good color, good saturation, and all the good stuff in the camera, we are okay. So I'm not going to do a lot of stuff to this image, okay, other than some of the basics, and that includes retouching. I'm going to use the clone stamp here. She's got a little bit of fuzzy kind of skin going on. I'm going to go low opacity, normal, and all I'm going to do, oh by the way, I'm in Photoshop 7. In my studio we have CS4 or 5 or something like that, and it doesn't matter which computer. I mean really you could do a lot of this in Photoshop Elements. So I'm going to just go in here and I'm just going to smooth out her skin a little bit. Now an image like this typically would be softened, and a lot of these little inconsistencies in her skin would actually be eradicated by using a soft focus action. And the soft focus action I like the most is the one that James Hodgins created, called the Hodgisoft, which at one time was called the No BS Softar. It mimicked, back in the old days, the Softar, which was a Hasselblad filter, and it works very, very well. I use it almost always. So I'm just really doing a little bit of retouching on the skin using the basic clone stamp. I don't use anything else. I know you have, oh, what is it here? You've got a healing brush, patch tool. I never use those things. Now she's got a little doodad under her chin there. I'm going to take that out. Now you'll notice her chin, bing, there's a little inconsistency here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the clone stamp, and really this is emphasized by the fact that if you look closely, there's a white line, okay, and that creates depth. We're going to take that away. If you take that away, you immediately start to create less depth, less of it doesn't emphasize the shadow so much, which is really what's bringing out the chin. So I'm going to now go into the darker area, and I'm going to darken this down a little more, and I'm going to smooth out this little dip right here. If you smooth out that little dip, it's going to create the illusion that there's no double chin. People don't like double chins. Okay, not a big deal in this case with her so much, but you know, you want to kind of fix that, and not, you know, do what you can. I'm going to use the burn tool now, And I'm going to bring that brush size down. Maybe not that low. Just a low exposure. I'm just going to give it a little burn. Just darken it a little bit. Don't overdo it. I mean, if you overdo it, it's not going to look good. So basically, the strategies I'm showing you are what we do in our studio over and over and over again. I'm going to go back to the burn tool. And this is basic. What I'm showing you now is very basic, very standard stuff. The simple tools that we used to use in the old darkroom days really are, you can compare them quite a bit. So I got the burn tool here, low opacity or exposure at 21-ish, low 20s. Okay, I'm going to go to highlights because what I want to do is I want to give a little bit of tonality to the brighter pixels so that when I go back to midtown, those pixels now have some detail that I can burn down a little more. Okay, so I'm burning. We used to do this in the darkroom days. Same basic idea. Okay, now if I want to really bring that out a little bit more, I'm just looking to see here what it needs. You know, if it needs anything. Oh, wait, I went too far. It was taking a while there. I thought there was something going on. So I'm going to go back in history. Sorry. I should show you what I'm doing. I'm using shortcuts on my keyboard. Okay. The burn tool is a heavy filter, so it took a while for it to respond. So I went Control Alt Z, and that'll go back in history. Okay, see? Or on a Mac, is it Alt? Command? See? So sometimes you got to go back in history. So I went a little bit too dark. That's too dark on the bottom, and I find that's a problem with some people doing workflow in their images. They tend to not use the burn tool properly. You have to finesse it. Okay, this is really, really important. And again, I hate to say this, but it harkens back to the old days of film, working in the darkroom, working and dodging and burning by hand was definitely an art form that took a bit of a skill set and took some time. And I urge you to really learn that. I'm just going to burn that little white thing. I have no idea what that was. Now her skin, again, I don't like it 100%, but we're going to soften it. So now that's looking pretty good. We're going to go with that before I run the soft focus. There it is before. Let me use a new document here, and we're going to compare the two later. So now what I'm going to do, before I run the soft focus, let me show you something. This is really cool. Under Filter, Topaz Adjust. It's one of my favorite plugins. Now, I'm not a big plugin user, and this one's really cool. It's like $34, $40 or something like that. You might want to check it out. And some of the settings I like to use are, I like to play with portrait drama just to see, you know, you can click it before and after. Sometimes dramatic works, sometimes mostly small detail, mild details, and detail. So basically those are the settings that I use the most when I use Topaz. Photopop works good too. See that? It just brings out a lot of shadow detail, which in this case we don't really want a lot of shadow detail showing up in the background. But I do want to give it a bit of almost a bit of a painterly look. So I'm going to go with this one here. Okay, see how it brings, now you got to watch this. This is like the crack cocaine of Photoshop filters. I find a lot of people overdo it. And you don't want to overdo it with this filter because it can become very, very overly processed looking, and we get very excited about it because we think it's like God's gift to filters. So now I'm going to go fade. This is a shortcut I use a lot. So what I did was I found that that was a little bit too much. I'm going to fade it overall. Here it is without. And I can bring it up. Gives it a little bit of a painterly look. Now if I want to go back to the original state and I want to brush in with the history brush right here, let's turn that up a little bit. Let's say I wanted to bring back some of the, I like the topaz, say, on the hair. Okay, that was nice. Maybe a little bit on the skin, just a tad more on the face. Okay, so you'll notice there's a little bit of shadow detail showing up in the background. Alright, now I'm going to run the Haji Soft. And let's It's a pretty cool action. It works very, very well. It's a few steps involved. There it is, running through the steps. When you set this action, you have to go into your preferences, and your history states have to be set to 50. Default is 20. So the first thing it asks me is to adjust the Gaussian blur, and in this case, pretty much almost always I go too heavy. And that's okay, we're going to back it off a little bit in a minute. So go continue, and then adjust the middle slider. And again, we can go too heavy, that's okay. Because right now the final step says, now with varying opacity and brush sizes, click anywhere in the image to bring back the original detail. Okay, because it defaults to the history brush, depending on the opacity, we can now go in and erase back some of that soft. Okay, so you have to kind of make that determination. That's what I love about this filter, or this action rather. So I'm going to take a little bit of soft around the belly. I'm going to take that off. But you notice how the tones around the shadows here, around the skin tones, they're just really soft and flowy. I'm going to take a little bit off her face right there. And let's assume that that's good. I'm going to show you another quick technique, and this is old school, but I use it all the time. Go to blur, Gaussian blur, just give it a lot of blur, click OK. By the way, this is my workspace, history, actions, and layers. That's all I ever work in. And we're going to go to history now, and we're going to back it up in one step and click on the history state there and use the history brush. Very low brush and very small brush size. And what I'm going to do is, it's just like adding powder using like makeup. See, I'm going to go in there and just kind of brush in some of the rough spots on her skin. So I'm really applying makeup. Women love that nice application of makeup. I mean, as long as you don't overdo it. So there it is, in a nutshell. I'm going to burn this down a little more. Okay, let me show you what we got. Alright, we got the two images here. Before and after. Okay. Now it didn't take me a long time. My workflow is actually I work about 5 times faster when we're in the studio. Actually, I don't do the work. We have an employee, but that's basically the workflow we use over and over and over and over again. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to show you how I make black and white adjustment. And I don't know, some people get into some arguments with me about this. Use saturation, Control or Command U. Saturation, black and white. That's all I do in my studio. Okay? There are filters and stuff that you can buy, and I just, for the life of me, cannot see why anybody would want to do anything else. You can use whatever you want. It all works. Now, one thing about going with desaturation is sometimes your tones, you'll throw away tones, so you have to go and adjust the contrast. And sometimes I'll just use levels for that. Okay, and just kind of bring back a little more snap, or I'll go use the curves, because I find that when I throw away all the color, the data, it just tends to go a little bit flat. So here it is before and after. So it often needs a little bit of a boost. Okay. Now if I want to go to sepia, same idea. I go to Use Saturation, click on Colorize, and the numbers are 25, 25, 0. Okay, I don't need anything else. Now if I find that that's too much, say I want to go half sepia, I can go fade. There's black and white, remember that was the last step? And there's half sepia. Or, likewise, I can go back to my color image. I do this a lot for pictures of little girls in dresses with lots of flowers. Colorize 25, 25. Okay, and then we're going to go fade, and we're going to fade to the color image. So it's half sepia. There's the color, see? There's half sepia, full sepia. But particularly it works good if you just want to work with that black and white image. and then half sepia it. 25, 25 are the numbers. Okay, so then I go to fade. Of course, you can create actions for all this. And you can just bring as much sepia as you want. Alright, just as whatever you want. Full sepia. Let's go half in this case. And then if I wanted to, I can go to noise, add noise. Gaussian monochromatic are selected. Let's bring in some noise. Okay, and we got kind of a painterly quality going now. If that's too much, just go to edit, fade. Very simple steps. It's all we ever do in our studio. We don't really complicate things. I like to save time. For me, it's all about saving time. Alright, so there's my techniques for basic color workflow, black and white and sepia. And that's how I would work it on an image like that. Retouching, soft focus, etc. This image here is kind of cool, so what I would do here is I would go, you remember this one, I shot it up against the white light. There's too much detail in there, so there's a couple of ways. If I wanted a nice silhouette, okay, let's just clone that out, because the light didn't quite work as far as expanding all the way down. Okay, so a couple things I can do. I can go to curves, hit on the black, click the black, make it a pure, okay, a pure silhouette, or I can dupe layer, top layer, multiply, which darkens. Okay, let's dupe it again. See what happens. Okay. However, it all, whatever works for you, whatever it is you want to try and achieve with that image. I would also try. I'm going to have to run a little bit of. See how that works. Topaz pulls out a little bit of detail. Let's try a couple different settings. Boom, boom, boom. I'm going to go with portrait drama. And let's go to dupe layer. And let's go to screen. So I'm going to brighten it up even more. Now I'm in layers here, so I can actually use a brush with a lower opacity. I can go in. And if I wanted to, just erase back some of the detail from that bottom. Okay, let's just do that. And then I'm going to flatten it. So I can go pure silhouette, or I can lighten it up using a little bit of topaz and duplicate layer in screen mode. A little bit more contrast. Okay, it's kind of nice. You could do this shot, as I mentioned in the Ditto Cam, you can do this shot type of pose up against a picture window at a client's home. And now let's add some Haji Soft. An image like this, I think, looks particularly good with white flowing robe or a nightgown or something like that. White on white. So really the colors are not really working, in my opinion. I just wanted to demonstrate the actual technique and remind you that you can, well, that's too strong. Look at that, yeah, opacity is 83%. Let's knock that down. Let's go back in history. Again, I went back in history right now. I went Alt Control Z, and it's just a shortcut. I want to keep it soft, but that was like actually erasing too much soft. So again, this image here with nice lighter clothes would look much better. Let's go to the Dodge tool now. Okay, I'm going to crank that up. Okay, Dodge tool, nice big brush, and I'm going to dodge the bottom. We want it soft and flowy. Okay, so an image like this might look good, soft and flowy. Again, it would look much better with a white, if she had a white outfit on. Let me go, just for fun, I'm going to try this here. Curves, I'm going to go to the high point, click on here. Sometimes you can brighten the whole image up by doing that. Makes it pure white. And of course, finally, before I move on to the next image, I'm looking at this image thinking, I think it would look really good in sepia. To me, this is a sepia image. would just look very, very nice. So that's how I would work an image like that. I could go pure silhouette, pure blackness, or I could just pull out the detail and she's just kind of floating. Okay, you can shoot it up against any bright wall, light, window, curtains, whatever. And if you had curtains and they were white sheers and there was detail in there, so what? It's all fine. Okay, let's look at this image here. You'll remember I clamped. There it is. There's that clamp. The evil clamp is showing. So I'm going to go in there full 100%. I'm going to clone it right out using a smaller brush. Just going to clone that out. Sometimes the clamps, I don't worry about them during a shoot. And if she's only ordering, say, an album of 5x7s, I won't overly fuss on it. But if she's getting a 30-inch canvas, I'll make sure it doesn't show because you don't want to order a canvas. By the way, I use Simply Canvas out of Ohio. Awesome company. Little plug there for them. Okay, I'm going to burn the bottom. See? Now I want to pull out that detail. See that detail in the background? Okay. I'm not going to do a lot of retouching because we already covered that. But there's two ways to pull out detail. Topaz will do a little bit. See that? Okay, just click OK. I find the topaz is too heavy on her skin and face. So I'm going to go to the history palette. I'm going to click on the last history state, use the history brush, and I'm going to erase away some of that topaz from her skin and face. Okay, but you see how it shows in the background still? Okay, and I want to erase that bottom because I went and burned that. Actually, let's go burn it a little bit more. And I'm going to burn around just a bit more, just to give it a little more of a subtle flow so that your attention goes into the subject. And I'm going to run the Hodges off. Now I just fired my action because I use actions all the time. You saw how I used it manually earlier. I went into my actions palette and I just clicked Photoshop or the actual action I needed. And we're almost done here. Okay, let's assume again that remember I mentioned I'm not going to go through retouching again. But let's assume it's all retouched. And let's assume I'm really happy with the image. I'm just going to get some more. There's too much soft in there for me. She's got a bit of a farmer's tan. You notice that? That would kind of drive me nuts. So I'm not going to retouch her face, but let me just see. I'm going to go low opacity. I'm going to go to darken with the clone stamp. I'm going to see what happens here. So I'm going to try and darken that a little more. Get rid of that. Get rid of that farmer's tan, or it's not a farmer's tan. She's obviously been out in the sun with her bathing suit. So I'm going to lighten that a little more. Let's go to lighten. Make it a little less obvious. We tell people, please don't tan. Don't go out and tan before your shoot. I find that tans just don't look good, and they're always a problem to deal with later. And sometimes we can't do any of this. Okay, I just did that really quick. I just wanted you to get an idea of what I would do if I were wanting to get rid of that tan or minimize it a little bit more. Otherwise, probably just have to deal with it and say, it is what it is. But if it was really important, I'd have to go in there and just kind of clone that out. Maybe in this case, I would try the healing brush, spend a little more time tweaking that out. Okay, so there's the image though, as I would workflow it, and here it is, full resolution as it was off that Canon camera. I want to show you something, and I did forget, didn't I? I forgot. So I just showed it to you in the first one. Remember my defog action? You can run that action at any phase. You don't have to do it the first step. We've proven that it can be done at any time. If I wanted to make a large, super large canvas, I'm going to show you how to do that really cool with no deterioration of the image. But first, let me go to Liquify. I'm going to go in here, And we're going to pick the contract. Brush size nice and strong. Oop, too big. We're going to thin out our arms a bit more. Do this all the time. You do this with the waist too. Okay, you got to be careful not to overdo it. Whoops, I didn't like that. Let's go back in history there. Alt Control Z. Okay, that looks good. So I thinned out her arms a bit using the Liquify tool. And we're running the filter, very heavy filter. I'm having a drink of water here while we're waiting for that to do its thing. Okay, so it may not be ideal 100% perfect, but that's how we do that. Now if I wanted to really kind of get the attention away, there it is, before, after, before, after. If I wanted to minimize the attention from her arms, I'd go back to the burn, low burn, and I would just darken that some more. Remember, I'm in highlight mode. Okay, remember, like before, I always do the same, follow the same steps. Mid-tone. So I get some of the attention away from her arm. Her arm's there, but it's like there's not as much light on it. So if I wanted to make a large wall portrait, let's say this was going to be a 40-inch or a 36-inch, I've done tests. If you're printing in-house, really the lowest you can go, or actually the highest you need to go when it comes to resolution, is 125 for an inkjet printer. If you're printing in lab, 200. A LaserJet printer in lab, the Lambda printers, whatever it is they're using, they're 200. You don't need 300. That's an absolute total myth. And what's a bonus about this is if you're an in-house printer, you got one of those Epson printers or HP, you just type in 125, click resample, and now I brought the image up to 28 inches using the native pixels. Okay, and I've not deteriorated the image whatsoever. So, but let's just skip that for now, and let's assume that we want to go to the lab, so we need 200, which is what we do. So click resample, I brought it up to an 18-inch, so I added dimension to it. And what you do from that point on is you go to image size. You see, I'm lost because I have an action for this. Here it is, image size. And if you click on resample, and if you go to percentage and you go to 110%, now again I've got an action for this, and every time I want to increase it 110%, I just click the action. Okay, so you see how it went up in size. It went up from 18 by 12 to 19 by 0.08. Now I've done tests on this, and I can blow this up easily to 40 inches. Literally no deterioration. Now you can do this, or you can use the crop tool and just go straight to 40, but it will deteriorate. Okay, so you have to do it incrementally. A lot of you people know that, I understand that, and this is how we make awesome wall-size portraits, and this is how we've been doing it since 2001 when my studio went digital with 3.2 megapixel files. I made these awesome 30-inch prints. And nobody could believe it. It was amazing. So that's how we do it. It's really just incrementally. You don't need any software. You don't need any special techniques. Let's go to this high key image now. Last time I used the unsharp mask is the defog, so I'm just going to run it. It was right there. There it is. I'm going to quickly clone this out. Go a little stronger here. Bing. Bigger brush. All about saving time. Use a big brush. Okay, let's assume that's good. We're going to use the dodge. I'm going to dodge the bottom here. Give it a nice vignette. I'm going to dodge the top. Okay. Got a little bit of that showing. We're going to get rid of that. Bye-bye. She's got a little pleat in her pants. Okay, so I'm lightening around so we have a very soft, flowy image. Again, I'm not going to retouch. I want to show you some techniques. Now we can duplicate this layer and go to screen, which brightens and pulls a lot of the mid-tone. So you decide how much do you want. Use the opacity. Okay, and this is what I do. I kind of pick the overall, and that's about right there. And if I need a little more detail, I go to the brush, low opacity. I'm going to erase a little more detail back from her clothes because her clothes is very white. Okay, let's assume that's cool. That's how I brighten an image. That's high key. I want to make it look consistently high key. I'm trying the topaz right now. Remember, I always kind of play with different settings, you know, and this isn't bad. Let's assume I like the overall look, but it's too heavy. I'm going to click OK anyways, and I'm just going to go to fade and just bring it back. There we go. Dodge, that's too much up there. I could probably use a little more detail in the pleats back there, right behind her. Because I find that there's a little bit too much of a drop off from here to here. So I might be tempted to just go clone some of that out. But I want some pleats still showing, so it's important that there's shadow in there. Okay, so let's run the No BS soft tar. Again, I used an action. Bingo. Nice and soft. Let's go super soft on this one. Super soft. Okay, I'm going to back that off a little bit. Good. Alright. Erase some of that. I got some emails coming through there. Sandy Pooch. I know Carrie Allen emailed me. There we go. Okay, that's pretty much it. You know, if I wanted to, again, this image I think would look good. I went to desaturate that time, but I think it would look good as a sepia. 25. Okay, maybe fade it back. There you go. Okay. So, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention too, when an image is going to print, and I always print at 200. So let's say in this case I was getting, an 18 by 12, which by the way is a legit size. Costco, if any of you guys use Costco, they do an awesome job. 12 by 18, they're digital printers. That's the size they make, the largest. So let's say I wanted a 12 by 18 of this image, and I go to print size, and I want to sharpen it. The final step that I do when I go to sharpen it, and I use the same tool as before when I use the defog, but this is not going to be a defog step now. This is going to be the actual sharpening. Go to 500, radius, the threshold is 0, radius is 0.01, you start there. See, I brought it up to 0.3, and I wait for that pop. There it is, it popped. Okay. So I sharpened it, and that's probably a little bit too much, so then I can go fade it out. So that's how I sharpen. And it's not something you'll see in any textbook or in any photography academic course, because it's technically not the way you're supposed to sharpen, but it's how we do it. Okay, we're almost done here, guys. I've got 2 more images I want to show you. This one here, you'll remember there was pleats, so all I would do is go in there and clone out the pleats. So I did that already, mostly for this image here. So again, you want to really try and get those steamed out, and we should have done it, but we kind of goofed up. So I'm going to burn. A little bit brusher, bigger brush. Highlights, low opacity. Okay, I'm burning all around to give those brighter pixels some tonality. Then I'm going to go to midtones. I'm going to darken it even more. It's real art to burning and dodging. Really it is. You don't want it to be too obvious. The light has got to fall off almost imperceptibly. Okay, I'm not going to do any retouching. I already showed you how to do that through cloning. I just want to show you how an image like this could be enhanced using very, very simple tools. Again, the same tools we used to use back in the day. And I love using that photo pop. It pulls out that Denny backdrop and those beautiful tones. I love this backdrop. It's called the Da Vinci. It's kind of a classic old master. It's really suitable for an image like this. Okay, let's say I'm okay with that, but it's too much, so we're going to fade it out a bit. I like to do this technique, and I'll show you why. So I'm getting an overall setting. I love that. So I'm going to go back and click the Topaz Original, go to the History brush, and I'm going to pull out just the background. So I really want those tones to pop out for me. Okay, and that's basically how an image like that would get run with a bit of soft R, which is what I just ran again with the action. Okay, so I'm not going to go with that much. I'm going to back it off a little more. Continue. Ooh. If you want the No BS Hajisoft, I keep calling it the soft R. It's my bad. Send me an email and I'll send it to you, or join the forum at nobsphotosuccess.com. I'll send it to you for free. Just send me an email at interpolate this at nobsphotosuccess.com, and it's yours. Okay. This is driving me nuts, so I'm going to go in there and fix this. She's got some boo-boos on her skin. I would probably go in and soften this out using the technique I showed you earlier, where I use the I'm not answering the phone, sorry. I can tell it's a long distance call. It's probably a telephone solicitation company. So that's how I would do the basic workflow there. And again, an image like this might look good in sepia as well. That's it. I mean, burning and dodging. Let's go back to the original. See the difference from that to that. Very, very simple tools. And that's how we do our workflow 90 to 95% of the time. Okay, one more image and we're done. This one here, you'll remember I took a shot at the end of the DittoCam session of her laying down, and I'm going to adjust canvas size. So it's 8 inches. So I'm going to go, I'm not sure which one, I'm just going to go 12 inches. See, I brought in some space all around. There's a reason why I'm doing that. Let me show you in a minute. Now, if I wanted to just say brighten the background on this image, I can go to curves, assuming there's enough light back there, and click on that background. That's not bad, actually. So I hit the high thing and curves, and I can go in and dodge out some of that on an image like that. That's what we do in our studio all the time. And if I find that sometimes I lose detail, say in the clothes, I can go back to my history brush. The tiles are showing here, but that's okay. I'm not going to worry about those so much. We can go in and dodge those out a little more. You'll notice I use a dodge tool quite a bit. Okay, so I'm going to go make a selection. Just let me do this here. Around her. Ooh, coming around, and I'm going to make a selection just of her. And I'm not going to fuss too much. It's just a quick selection. Doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to go to feather. So let's go, okay, 5 pixels is okay. Okay, I'm going to go Control J or Command J, and what I've done is I've created a layer. Okay, or if you want to see how I did that, Control J, layer via copy. So I've just copied the selection. Now I'm going to go to Transform, Scale, or Control T. I usually use shortcuts, so I'm going to do that in this case, Control T or Command T. And if you hold your Shift key down, it won't distort the image as you enlarge or do whatever. And I'm going to flip this, I'm going to invert it. Alright, that looks cool. So it's going to look like a reflection. Okay, don't forget, we've got 2 layers here, so we can adjust this as we need to. So I'm selecting the top layer with the, did I lock it accidentally? I did, didn't I? Okay, so we're going to tweak this in there so it looks like a reflection. And what I can do is I can knock that opacity down, which we're going to do anyways. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to erase. I'm going to erase some of that. Alrighty, just do a little erase right here. You know, you could fuss over it a little bit, do what you need to do. So basically we have a reflection, or what looks like a reflection, and no one's the wiser. So I would go in there and just kind of erase some of that out. Yada yada yada. You got to play with it a little bit. I'm not going to do all that, but you get the idea. Right? It's kind of cool. N'est-ce pas? C'est bon. And that's how we do the reflection. That's how we do that pose. Now, I mentioned it during the Ditto Cam, this pose. You have to make sure that right elbow goes back and that left elbow goes back this way. You got to get that leg over a bit. It's a little bit awkward, but most women can do this pose with ease. Okay, so that's it. And of course, you knock down the opacity. If it's too strong on the reflection, it doesn't look right. So you want it to look, you know, like it's very subtle. And you can go in and add water ripples, I suppose, if you want. An image like this, I would add a soft focus to it, just to give it that overall dreamy look. So anyways, this has been a long tutorial. I apologize for that, but I wanted to cover those basic steps and basic points. So thanks for paying attention, and thanks for listening and watching, and thanks for tuning in to the Ditto Cam for Photography Schoolhouse. I'm signing off. Yours in photography. Feel free to email me if you have any questions. I'm here for you. Interpolate this at nobsphotosuccess.com, and if you need clarification on anything to do with this workflow that I gave to you today, feel free to contact me, or if you want that Hajisoft, I will send it to you as well. Take care. Talk to you later.